So what's going on here? Haven't quite got the lights up here. Oh, here we go. 5 lights come on. And the race is underway. Looks to be a good start from TT at the moment. He already takes there, and Platty already up. Plus then the Ferrari of Ripley has had an absolute mad. There's carnage already at the first corner. The Ferrari, the Red Bull, and the Williams all look to have gone off, and I think immediately that is going to throw off yet another safety car. But everybody around, Bullet is in P2. AMS Fairley's in P3. Platty looks to have got a good start, but unfortunately missed out thanks to the contact there, which is up now into 4th position. A big gap between the two AlphaTauris of P5 and P6. Jake Sharrock and Mr. Wiggles. IROS J is in 7th position. KZ in 8th. 9th is Aki. And 10th is APS Greg in the other Mercedes. Sumgod has made up his time and made up into 11th position. And FRA John B is down to 15th position. So that could not have been a better start for TD in the Ferrari, and it looks like Ripley at the back of the field, I think he may have some front wing damage. Yeah, you can see his end plate has damaged, and now what we have here is, you can see on the screen, we have predicted pit stop strategies. You can go one stop and go onto the harder tyres, or you can play 2 stop and be fastest or overall. Bullet looks to have dropped down. He looks to have had a very, very bad exit there, and he's coming into the pits. So that doesn't quite bode well for the Aston Martin, as TD leads the field away from P1 and looks to have got an absolutely lightning start, and that was exactly what the Ferrari driver needed as AMS Fairley. But yeah, it looks like Sumgod as well has retired from this session, it seems. So I don't know whether he may have had damage there, but a lot of drivers coming into the pits. Maybe the connectivity was so bad for... Yes, and he says the connectivity was rather bad for him, so commiserations, unfortunately, to Sumgod. You were doing really, really well coming up to 11th as well, and racing on short notice as well. So commiserations to you as well. With TD already getting the lead that he needs. Now that Bullet has unfortunately retired from the race as well, it seems Sean Gregory may be having some issues as well, so I'm not sure who's been retiring from where, but we're 7/10ths behind, so it's not really much to get the benefit of overtaking with DRS. Suppose it can help you stay with the car in front and set you up for the first corner, but you're not going to get many overtakes from that position there, unless you're absolutely ballsy, it seems, as John B is now moved up into 11th position, and now sits behind IIRL, who looks to have had a very, very bad exit out of that banked left-hander, and John B is already passed. Oh, and the Mercedes got off. Oh, and the Mercedes and the Williams and the Red Bull, they've all gone off as well, and unfortunately quite a few people crashing when they come off of that banked corner. This is certainly a very tricky track for everybody to sort out, and Jean Carlos has got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. But already, as soon as John B has an issue, everything kind of falls into his hands in a way. So a lot of carnage there. We have about 2, 3, 4 corners there. So it must have been KZ, the Williams of Lotus Renault, and obviously Jean Carlos as well, who's got his 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. But John B on the soft compound tyres is doing exactly what he needs to do. 1010 has got DRS thanks to APS Greg, who should be protected from the Alpine, who is on the soft compound tyres. That's going to give him a pace advantage that he's that the tyre compounds will give him, but it'll be a very much earlier pit stop. But you can see just how quickly he's getting onto the back of the Alfa Romeo. Looks close enough to attempt to move. It goes down to the inside. It goes round to the right-hand corner, and there you have it. That's up into 7th position now for the Alpine, ahead of the Mercedes, ahead of the Alpine, and ahead of the Alfa Romeo. The drive that John gets out of this banked corner is crucial. It's so helpful to him to make sure he gets the toe that he needs. With DRS and slipstream available to him, as he goes down to the inside, what does he do? He lunges past him there, and the AlphaTauri gets another penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So now already John B is now up into 5th position. but he's obviously about 10 or so seconds off of TD's lead. So weirdly enough, we haven't had a safety car yet in this race. So we're going to go on board with the Alpine as he fights the Williams. Oh, and he spun! He spun! Unbelievable stuff! And he's hit the back. Unbelievable scenes here, guys, as FRA John B spins out and unfortunately got too much on the curb. And now the Alpine has dropped down to 9th position with dirt, and that is not going to do his tyres any good at all. But he's got on going, and this is one of those survival of the fittest races, it seems. And has he got any extensive damage on that car? Looks like it may have hit the diffuser, so we'll just see what his lap times are, just to see if any of the damage that he has got is particularly threatening in terms of performance. Looks like he's doing well enough to hold it. Battles in there. We have Hyper, who had quite a messy qualifying session, still behind the Red Bull versus McLaren, with John B not too far behind on soft compound tyres, it seems. It won't be long, I suspect, before John B passes. There's 6/10 between the two now, as in front Fairley has gotten within DRS range of the Ferrari of TD, and things are certainly spreading out. Behind, there's a bit of a train falling behind the Lotus Renault, about 4/10 between the Ferrari. Oh, and we have a safety car that's been called out. That must have been for Supermac retiring. So for those of everybody here that's done on the soft compound tyres, from about Jake Sharrock, KZ, Ripley, and they're all in the pits to change tyres. What's Jean Carlos going to do if he stays out? Well, it was going to happen sooner or later, guys, and now it has. The safety car has been deployed. Rather concerning for him, as TD now comes into the pits to change tyres. He's going on to the hards, which should theoretically mean his last stop. Almost a little bit of lag there from TD, but he comes out ahead of the McLaren nonetheless. Wiggles now changes tyres, and 10-10, that moves him up into 3rd place. Which isn't too bad, though, all things considered, for him, because he started on those hards. He's going to have to pit nonetheless, but he can go a bit longer and buy some more life for the softs when he changes onto those. IIRL Hyper stayed out in 4th place. Wiggles comes out in 5th. Sean Gregory stayed out in 6th. John B is also pitted to put on the medium compound tyres. So we can expect he'll be stopping again. As he watches, everybody now starts to pile up behind the safety car. It's still got a lot of work to do. Lando reckons Fairley will get TD. Let's see what happens. What is the safety car going to do? It is in this lap. So there we go. We are going to go on board with TD. We'll just go over to the back. Hyper's doing brilliantly, but the thing is, he hasn't come in. Sean Gregory has actually spun down. When is TD going to drop it? When is he going to pelt away? And it looks like he's done that now. It's not quite the restart he would have wanted. He's 3/10 ahead of AMS Fairley, but it looks like everyone is going to get through around pretty cleanly. Sean Gregory's actually dropped to the back, and Iros J, I think, is coming in now to serve his drive-through penalty. What's happened now? And it looks like, what was it? I think it might have been Ripley that's gone off. Yes, Ripley has gone off there in the Ferrari. Positions are changing again. Jean Carlos now has spun in the Red Bull. He's reset himself onto the track. I don't think he was supposed to do that. We'll let him off as it's his first race. And there we go. Still carnage at the back, and Sam Ken clearly needs to get a move on. He needs to overtake that Mercedes because he's got that Alpine bearing down his neck. all know how quick John B is. He's on a soft tyre, but he's got a lovely line out of that long left-hander. We'll go on board with the Red Bull to see what he does. Is he going to chuck it one down to the inside? No, he's not. He's going to hang back. See what he can do come turn 1. DRS is not activated yet. Not quite as wide there, but the Mercedes will have the tow from the Williams above to help him. He's got overtaken everything on, but I think that's enough for Greg, I think, to defend, unless he yeets him down the outside, but it goes around to the outside. Can the Red Bull make it stick? No, he can't. Jake Sharrock has got another time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. As now we see John B going round to the outside. Oh, and it's so close. You have to be so careful to not hit each other there. The concertina on these cars, particularly around this, and that's a lovely shot together right there. And oh, 10-10 has gone off. 10-10 has spun in the Alfa Romeo. But you don't know where to look, and Hyper has gone off as well now. You do not know where to look as John B goes down the inside. Oh, there's no contact there. They managed to keep it just clean. It is so action-packed, absolutely. Unbelievable here. And now, so, look how close it is. They're pretty much all nose to tail around that cell from about... Oh, and the Mercedes has spun now. As APS Greg has also spun. And what's going to happen to the Red Bull and the Alpine? Oh, and it is so close. DRS has now been enabled. It's now nose to tail between 5th, 6th and 7th positions. Goes down to the inside. Unfortunately, I think the Red Bull is lagged behind. What is the Williams going to do? Not much there. And John B takes 5th position. I'm going to blame commentator's curse on that one. So it's not a good day so far for the Alfa Romeos. Sam Ken still behind him. But now that John B is only 8 tenths now behind the Williams, he's making good of those medium tyres. As up top in the lead, or what's happened back there, looks like the Alfa Romeo of 10-10 has gone off. Commiseration him, but the gap is closing at the front. It's a nice line that McLaren got out of there. This is where the fight is for the lead. And Lotus Renault looks to have gone down the order now. 10-10 has retired. Now with 4 tenths now. He's got the DRS open. We're going to go on board with AMS Fairley. He hasn't got overtake on at the moment though. But we are going to go on board with John B, who overtakes the Williams and goes up into 4th position. He's got 4 seconds to make up on the AlphaTauri and Mr. Wiggles, who I have to say is doing a sterling job there. IIRL Hyper, who clearly is not a fan of this track. We'll see what's happened here. Yes, those tyres have just overshot. The surface tyres is... Unfortunately, he's just got to keep it very tidy, but those surface tyre attempts are not going to help him at all, as Fairley now overtakes the Red Bull and goes up into 4th. He'll be ruining that spin because he will have lost the opportunity in many ways to fight for the lead. He'll be hoping for a safety car now to bring the field back closer together. 2.1 seconds now, the gap between FRA John B and Mr. Wiggles. You can just see him there at the front. Look at there, look at the top right of the screen. You can see the AlphaTauri of Mr. Wiggles, who has done an absolutely sterling job on those hard compound tyres, who actually won, like I said, for those who don't know, won the AT2 championship last year. But already that John B has taken about half a tenth then just in that sector alone. John B really is making inroads into that AlphaTauri. But the AlphaTauri is running his own race, so I don't suspect he'll be fighting him too much. And IIRL Hyper is speeding in the pit lane, but I highly suspect he's come in to retire the car. And he has retired the car just as soon as I say it. Next battle is Sam Ken in the Red Bull, behind AMS Fairley. Yellow flags in the first sector, so it looks like Mr. Wiggles must have had an off, and now The Alpine is 4 tenths behind him. This is exactly what John B needed. He's slowly gaining as well on TD. The overall gap between those two now is 4.2 seconds. He's not going to get an overtake here, but maybe he'll get it done at the end of the first DRS zone that they're coming up to right now. Wiggles is definitely due some luck as well, and I think Fairley has... Well, I think that's maybe been Fairley, but no, I think that was just maybe the ghost of IIRL Hyper probably retiring. Yes, it looks like it was. But TD is controlling the field well, and look how close the Alpine is right here. I highly suspect that this is it. As long as John B gets a very, very good exit, which I believe he has done. Yellow in Sector 2. I think that maybe, yes, it's the AlphaTauri of Jake Sharrock. Wiggles defends. He goes down to the outside. And there we have it. John B up into second position. Covers that move off nicely indeed. But the question is now, can those mediums, when all is said and done, given how much he's pushing, go to the end? We know the hards more than likely will, but that's not the case for the medium compound tyres. That's the fight for the lead. It'll be very, very hard for that to happen. Until then, the closest battle that we can see on board here is between the Mercedes and the Williams. The Williams goes to almost defending against fresh air there, because the Mercedes was nowhere near far enough to attempt an overtake. Feeling the need to defend against thin air. And APS Greg looks to have gone off in the Mercedes. And interestingly enough, Mr. Wiggles is actually staying with FRA John B, still within DRS range, so this is quite a remarkable drive so far from the AT2 champion. Can he stay with him through this sector? It's just on the cusp of a second. It's quite a nice line tyre there. It goes over a second, so I don't think he's actually going to get the DRS. He would have broken out of it. And, oh, John B's had a moment. John B has fallen down into third position. As Jake Sharrock sets the fastest lap, John B must have had a very bad exit there, which now he's lost over a second to TD, and Mr. Wiggles now goes back into second position. So for those of you on the chat that said he probably pressured and forced into a mistake, I think you very much got your wish. As Sean Gregory pits, having done 22 laps on those tyres, which I think he's in the pits. And now John B got a little bit of making up to do. This will be quite a heroic defence, I think, from Wiggles if he manages to hold this. But now John B is riled, it seems. 3 tenths behind in the DRS zone. We're going to go on board. He's not going to attempt a late yeet into that right-hander. No, he doesn't. If he can stay within about 3 or 4 tenths coming off the back of this banked right-hander here, he'll certainly have a chance to overtake. Oh, Wiggles has spun! Wiggles has spun in the AlphaTauri. Unbelievable stuff. And that is such a shame for the AlphaTauri, because he was doing a tremendous job. He gets back on track and rejoins in 5th position. It wouldn't have done his tyre temperatures any good though, so he probably needs a lap just to take it easy. But that is a massive shame for Mr. Wiggles, and I think it's my commentator's curse, to be honest here, guys. You really do not know where to look in this race, I'll tell you that for free. And Aki looks like he's got caught up trying to avoid the Mercedes and has lost a bit of time himself. IIRL Hyper has left the session, it seems, and as TD comes across the line with 11 laps to go, the gap between himself and FRA John B is 3.2 seconds. I highly suspect it won't be long before John B goes up to the back, but the thing is, can he conceivably overtake TD, and can he hold on to that position with his tyres in a competitive state? I see he's wearing Fernando Alonso's helmet there in the Alpine. I think for the sake of the stream, it will be a good one. Lando reckons TD will do it. I'm not betting on anything right now, as the next closest battle is between the Williams and the Red Bull. KZ has come into the pits to put on a fresh set of soft tyres. It's 2.9 seconds now between the leaders. 2.8, 2.7 now. It's really coming down. It really is that coming up to the start of the third sector, the left hand and then the right hand and then the left, that's really where the Alpine makes up time. Maybe that's just where the grip with the hard tyres, you don't quite get as much where you need to. Probably wasn't the best line, if I'm honest, from TD. 10 laps to go. 2.6 seconds gap now between the top two. My eyes off this now. For those of you hoping for a little bit more screen time, apologies. We're going to go on board with the Ferrari, who now only has a 2-second lead. Are there any back markers coming up? There's just the Mercedes up in front, so they're not going to be a factor as long as they keep themselves clean and don't drive into anything. It's 1.9 now between the two. It's going to be a very, very close finish between the two drivers. 1.8 now. This is coming into the section where John B really does make up the time. Oh, and it's down to 1.6 now. 1.7. 1.6 now. This is coming up now. We've got 8 to go after this one, and I suspect it will be the start of the next lap, if not the one before that, where we see DRS goes here. And oh, and Jake Sharrock has crashed. Thankfully, it's not terminal, so that won't quite bring out the safety car. But the Ferrari has it all to do up front. You can just separate them both. TD, having dominated the field, having dominated the race from the front, is up against John B, who is throwing everything but the kitchen sink at him to take that race win in the Alpine. I know I drive an Alpine myself, so naturally I've been inclined to support the Alpine driver, but I've got to give it to TD here for what has been a very controlled drive. Probably one of the drives of the season, because it's been very, very consistent from him. Very, very strong. And now John B 1.1 seconds behind now. He's doing this with 18 lap old medium tyres. Are they... I'm very surprised that they haven't worn off yet. The gap stabilizes at 1.1. 7 to go and they cross the line. This is incredible stuff. It's now within a second now between the two, and I think Jake Sharrock has gone off yet again and crashes through into the pits. Now that he's crashed in the pits, I don't know whether that's going to throw out a safety car here. And it's now 6/10 between the two. He's lost half a second in that first sector. So much to do now. Apparently Mark D did 35 laps on the hard tyre, and now we see John B really on the back of the Ferrari. It's so close between the two. Can TD hold him off? Are those tyres going to last? It would be one of a kind sort of drive from John B if they do last. They'll come now down to the banked right-hander. Not quite the best launch. TD is going to have to deploy his energy to defend. I don't think it's close enough here for the Alpine to attempt an overtake now. He's showing him the car though, letting him know that he's there. It is so close. The Mercedes is coming out of the pit lane. But thankfully, not in front of these, not in between these two. That would have upset John B massively. And it all depends what kind of drive you can get off of that banked corner. TD has it all to do. He has got to resist a million loads, like so much pressure now from the Alpine, who is an absolute mystery how his tyres are lasting at this point. And look how much inroads he's making in on the Ferrari. It's coming up now to about 4/10 not the room here to overtake, so he can save his energy. And then again, I think maybe TD can as well. But oh, look at the Constantina. That was not the corner that TD needed at all. It's 2 tenths now, so this is certainly John B's strongest chance to take the lead of this Grand Prix. It's not the best exit though from the Ferrari. It's 3 tenths. This is certainly John B's chance to take the lead. As we go now, he goes round to the outside, and there we go. And just like that, John B has taken the lead of the Dutch Grand Prix. And oh, and TD has crashed. Oh no, and TD has crashed out, having lost the lead. He's reset the third spot. Oh, what an absolute shame for TD, who drove an absolutely storming race. Crashed out at the worst place, and now he's got to drive all the way down to the end with no front wing. He stays out of the Haas's way quite sensibly, but now John B has retaken the lead. What a shame. What an absolute shame. Now, I don't care what you guys say, I am not putting that down to commentator's curse. Oh, and Lotus Renault spins off in the Williams. That hands 5th position to the Alfa Romeo of IIROS J. Oh, and Greg spins in the Mercedes, and IIROS J now up into 4th position. And John B, how has he done this? It's an absolutely gutting drive for TD, who's been absolutely dominating the pack, but now comes in. Now John B looking to take it easy. He's dropped a little bit of time now to the McLaren, who probably senses an opportunity to win. But, oh, you gotta spare a thought for TD to take it easy. 24 laps those medium tyres have done, as has for Platty as well. The closest battle on track seems to be P4 and P5, as the other Red Bull of Jean Carlos looks to be staying out of the way. I think he's ghosted at the moment, so it's not been the best day so far for Mercedes, with neither of them looking to be scoring at the moment. But with 4 tenths in between IIROS J and Sam Ken, is the Alfa Romeo going to attempt to move? No, he's not. As Mercedes goes off yet again, it's certainly been a very controlled drive so far from John B, who you find in these streams, you just look at this guy and you just think, how the hell does he do it? He's made those tyres last 25 laps, goes over the longer tangent into the final sector now, as the Alpine, who is very late to the grid, comes across the final corner now. We'll take one last view across the banked corner with 2.6. He triumphed when everyone else cracked around him. FRA John B comes across the line to win the Dutch Grand Prix. AMS Fairley takes 2nd position in the McLaren. And we have Platty, who's also done a brilliant job to nurse his tyres, takes the final podium slot. Sam Ken crosses the line, but loses 4th position thanks to a penalty. IIROS J takes 4th as a result. Lotus Renault now comes across the line to cap off 6th position in the Williams. And Aki takes saves, but now Sean Gregory actually takes 6th place in the Aston Martin. TD takes 9th, and Mr. Wiggles unfortunately takes... So there we have it, guys. Commiserations to TD, I think, who I think will get my shout of driver of the day with all things considered. But John B puts in the performance that you more or less expect from him. So well done to him for what was a truly brilliant drive. Certainly a weird feeling, I agree, Padge. now with the Alpine takes the lead and takes the win. You come to expect this from John B. Just so consistent and so brilliant, so well timed. And unfortunately, TD, after lost the lead, spun out and finished in 9th position. But he took the fastest lap, so they will earn him that extra point at least, although there's some commiseration.